What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Over time we've seen a ton of different items get added and removed from League of Legends over the years, but for the most part a lot of these items are kind of just common knowledge and part of what people reminisce about past seasons of League of Legends. Today we're bringing you a list of items that were removed super early on in the game, so it's likely that most of you guys probably never even know that these items existed in the first place, and a lot of them have some really interesting effects that you would definitely never see in the modern game today. Some of them have had their designs used on newer items, and some of them were just totally unhealthy for the game and removed to avoid future issues, but either way they're all pretty cool, and it's interesting to take a look back into the kinds of items that Riot initially made for League of Legends. And as well, this video is going to be sponsored by LOL Sumo, which is a free app for iOS and Android. I've been messing around with it for the last few months and it's proven to actually be really useful for me. You know, they give you some really detailed stats of your own play, so now I can figure out and get statistical explanations of exactly just how boosted I really am. They also help you out with a bunch of stuff that is tailored to your individual game, like they can give you some really solid item builds for your game that are based on your opponent's champions, as well as giving you like some dynamic tips and tricks based on the actual game that you're in to help you get an edge based on your in-game matchups with some nice coaching features. You can also follow the pros or follow your friends to keep up with them and see what they're doing in their games too. Personally, I don't follow anyone because I have no friends, but maybe some of you guys can help me fix that. They've also got a pro version as well, which I've been using. If you want to take it even further, get some more advanced analysis on your performance and the game-specific matchups and stuff. And they're adding more features all the time, but again, it is free to try out, so you don't have to take it from me. You can just check it out at the link in the description below and decide for yourself if you like it or not. And without further ado, hope you guys enjoyed the video. First up on our list was an item called Renewal Tunic, otherwise also known as the Renewal Shell. It was a defensive item that gave 24 armor and 10 health regeneration, along with a pretty interesting passive that would give you 20 health over 5 seconds after you were hit with an attack. That passive is really similar to how the newer Spectre's Cal works, since that gives you an amplified health regen when you take damage from a champion. Now, one really cool thing actually about this item is that it originally used the Heart of Gold icon, so despite Riot deciding to remove this item from the game way back in closed beta, they clearly liked its icon enough and managed to find a new home for the passive a few years later. Next up, we're looking at an item that was known as the Sage's Ring. It cost 975 gold and gave players nothing but 500 mana actually. Now this isn't necessarily a bad item, you know, some mages can definitely get some use out of a big fat mana pool increase. You can do a lot of spamming with your abilities with that much mana, but the problem was it existing at the same time as Sapphire Crystal, which was an item that also gave you nothing but mana, but did it just much better. That meant in the early game, when you had free slots, you might as well just stack Sapphire Crystals rather than buying one Sage's Ring if you wanted mana, since you'd get the same benefit for a little bit less cost. It was removed in the second half of Season 1 for that very reason, and it was maybe more useful than Sapphire Crystal as a late game pickup when you were like super desperate for mana and had 1000 gold and maybe only one item slot remaining, but in pretty much almost every other situation it was just terrible, leading for the item to be really unpopular and pretty much just a waste of an item slot in the shop. Next up, we're taking a look at Rejuvenation Potion, which was a consumable item back in the alpha phase of League of Legends that would give you both 175 health and 150 mana. It was used as an alternative to health and mana potions, probably when you knew that you'd need both resources restored but couldn't afford to waste item slots, bringing both potions into a specific fight. It shared a ton of similarities with the old item Crystalline Flask, which would give you 120 health and 60 mana over 12 seconds for each charge. Unlike Crystalline Flask though, which of course had 3 charges that would refresh every time you went back to base, this Rejuvenation Potion was a one-time use item. So it definitely functioned more like a combined health and mana potion rather than your go-to source of sustain for the early game. Now our fourth item for today was actually an alpha phase version of an item that was in the game for quite a long time, of Malady. And this item was originally called Opon's Razor, and it used the same artwork, giving 15% lifesteal and 40% attack speed for a total cost of 2040 gold. It also had a passive effect that would give you a 30% chance on hit to trigger a debuff that would cause the enemy champion to take an extra 8 magic damage whenever they were attacked for 8 seconds. And this debuff could stack up to 6 times, so it could potentially mean a ton of extra damage in a fight if you got those stacks rolling. It was re-released during the closed beta of League of Legends as Malady, before being later reworked and then eventually totally removed in Season 3. Most players probably do remember Malady as one of the core on-hit items for champions that really like to abuse those effects though, like the days of on-hit Teemo and Kog'Maw and stuff. But a lot of you guys might not have known that it actually started out as Opun's Razor, so that's definitely really interesting to me at least. And here's another item that was removed during the alpha phase of League of Legends, Pendant of Zephyrus. Honestly, it was probably a good thing that this item was removed way back in the alpha phase because it was honestly just outrageously powerful, giving you nothing but an aura actually that gave your allies and yourself 25 armor and 30 magic resistance, which means that in a team fight across your team you were getting 125 armor and 150 magic resistance out of a single item, which is actually pretty crazy, and it's a big part of the reason that Riot are doing away with the aura from Aegis of the Legion in the preseason. Auras in general are crazy powerful, but at the same time, they're also very lackluster because you usually don't feel the actual effects of an aura. There was almost no bad time to buy Aegis, and that was only magic resistance exclusive. I mean, imagine when Aegis of the Legion gave an armor aura as well. It would just be better than twice as good, honestly, and dish out a ton of unfair stats and really limit itemization for supports as well, who pretty much would have to pick it up every single game if they wanted to stand a chance in teamfights. Now for the next item, we don't actually have an icon or imagery, but we do know that it was an item called Gouging Blade, and it gave 25% attack speed, 25 HP every 5 seconds, and it also had a unique passive that had a chance to apply a little bit of damage over time on hit. It would deal 10 damage per second for 10 seconds, and it would stop the target regenerating their health over the duration, making it actually quite an effective bleed ability. In terms of the on-hit effect, it was actually really similar to Opun's Razor in terms of the passive and the stats that it gave, so it's possible that Gouging Blade was the earlier version of Opun's Razor, making it the original Malady that was designed super early on in League of Legends' development. Now another alpha item that we also unfortunately do not have an image for is the Mana Battery, and it introduced a ton of randomness into the game that Riot probably decided was maybe a little bit too excessive during the alpha phase when they removed it. The base stats were 300 health and 25 ability power, but it also had a unique passive that gave you a 20% chance on attack for your next spell cast to gain 100 ability power, which meant that 1 in 5 abilities was gonna give you a chance to deal just a massive amount of increased damage, especially considering back in the alpha phase, a lot of champions had AP ratios that were 1.0 or above, potentially even as high as 2.0. If you got this item in the early game, that could mean a random chance to deal an extra 200 damage on a single ability almost, even with a chance to do it twice in a row since it had no cooldown, which is definitely super insane. The weirdest part of this item though was probably the name. It was called Mana Battery, even though it gave no mana or mana regen at all. I mean, this item actually had absolutely nothing to do with mana at all despite the name, but it's definitely still interesting to see what the item could have been. Cloak and Dagger is the name of our next item, and it was both added and removed in Season 1, so if there's any item that some of you guys know on this list, it's probably this one. There's going to be some of you guys out there that might actually remember this item, and it cost 1450 gold and gave you both 20% attack speed and 20% critical strike, alongside a bonus of 35 tenacity, which back then would mean you spent 35 less time in crowd control effects, although it couldn't stack with other tenacity items. It was really made for assassins that used physical damage since they could really benefit from the critical strike chance, and it was mostly used as like an ambushing item alongside boots of mobility since they didn't offer the tenacity that you would want to avoid being kited or locked down and killed. It was pretty expensive for a tenacity item though, and it wasn't all that popular or picked up particularly often, so Riot decided to take it out of the game before it even made it through a whole season actually. And our next item for today goes by the name of Light Slicer. Again, it was an super early alpha item, so unfortunately there's no image for it, but I've got to say these early alpha items had some pretty kick-ass names honestly. The Light Slicer would give you 45% attack speed and 12% critical strike chance, along with a passive that gave every third attack 75 bonus magic damage, alongside making that specific attack undodgeable. It was essentially designed to give AD carries a way to get more damage across without having everything avoided by the dodge mechanic, but it also offered bonus magic damage to make sure that it wouldn't be too abusable by armor penetration or in combination with other AD items. It could have also potentially worked as maybe like a hybrid item actually for, champions that wanted to deal mixed damage to stop enemy tanks being able to stack one defensive stat up and just nullify all your damage, but Riot decided that it didn't really have a place, so it ended up being removed before the closed beta launched. Either way though, that just about wraps up our list of items that you probably never knew got removed from League of Legends. Some of the designs are actually really cool and could potentially slot into the game now if they maybe had like a couple changes or just balance the stats out really, but for the most part, there's some kind of equivalent of the effect honestly, so maybe it wouldn't make sense to add another item into the game that essentially does the same thing. Either way though, it looks like that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.